Hey guys, what's up? Stock Retail coming back to you. Boy, did we have a big news day today. So I just kind of wanted to talk about some of the headlines and unpack that a little bit, relate it back to our multi-year journey here on everything going on around some of our stocks and crypto and things we've been talking about for a very long time. Just amazing to see some of it come to a head. Amazing to see some really big players take some action on some things that we thought we saw. And so finding out that we were right about a lot of things. I'm going to share that, go over it. I know for a while, if you are more of an ape and you follow me, then you've been waiting for some earnings forecasts for Q4 and for 2024. All those numbers, honestly, are ready. I've just been real busy. It's just about pulling the slides together, but I have that. I'll do that in another video soon. Today, I really want to talk about this Binance news and recent news on both FTX and with a famous short. If you're finding this video because you saw news on Binance and the DOJ and all of that, and you just wanted to hear a voice about that, I'm not going to make this too heavy about AMC today, but just so you know, this channel, I'm basically an AMC channel here, but I talk a lot about goings on in markets. So if you didn't catch today, basically the big news breaking this morning was that the DOJ and the CFTC, so the Commodities Futures Trading Commission, um, and actually a host of other letter agencies, basically came out and said, "Hey, we caught these guys red-handed." And if you saw that, both Binance, the company, and CZ himself, the person, pled guilty to some charges. And so what's happening is, um, there was a level of criminality that, in my view, frankly, the government could have just shut Binance down completely, just shut it all down. But I'm sure that would have had massive ripple effects throughout the entire global economy. And so rather than that, they have given them a healthy enough fine that should hurt enough that others are not going to want to continue this behavior. In the meantime, CZ will, it looks like, serve, I think, 18 months in prison. And so they've sent a pretty powerful message that crime is not going to pay. Now, I know a lot of us have a point of view that fines generally are more of a slap on the wrist and basically a cost of doing business. In this case, if you didn't catch, it was over a $4 billion fine, some of that directly from CZ's pocket himself, some of it from Binance. And then what's more is the government is going to basically have oversight over Binance for a couple of years, I think it was. And they're going to have to basically be squeaky clean for a while. There's going to be a lot of oversight. We're going to talk a little bit about that too. So just you can kind of see from a high level, just there's an account I'm quoting from Twitter here, so you can see the bullets: conspiracy, conducting unlicensed money transmitting business, violating International Emergency Economic Powers Act. We're going to kind of cover what was discussed. Before we do, I just want to highlight the relevance, really, for AMC and GameStop and a couple others. We're not the only ones whose tokens were made for, but if you haven't been following or your head's been under a rock on crypto, then maybe you don't know the relationship and why I'm connecting this. So first off, let's just cover the timeline real fast because I've done it on this channel multiple times. You can go find other videos where I talk all about the history of tokens and AMC and go much deeper. Or you can go find a Reddit I wrote literally at this time. It was Thanksgiving of 2021, so 2 years ago. There's a very long Reddit I wrote on digital assets for AMC and problems with tokens and Binance and all this stuff. So we knew a long time ago, but if you didn't know, if you're newer here, or if you just want a quick recap, let's fly through this. So obviously January 2021 is very famous. We've got the Dumb Money movie now about GameStop. Perhaps, most people here, of course, know the story of AMC through that time. There are other so-called meme stocks who've been through all of this. But the big thing being that stokens, digital tokens that are supposed to be stock tokens, thus we call them stokens, they're supposed to be backed one-to-one by the equity they represent. Those were created by Binance the day before the buy button removal and everything that we've been through since. So that is pretty, in my mind, a smoking gun on the timeline. Just the fact that the tokens were made at the same time Citadel and Robinhood were taking away the buy button, as was Interactive Brokers and all that. But I've covered all that in other videos. FTX kind of steps in a little more. They start showing up a little more in June on the timeline of the same year. And recall that, AMC had a really large run that June as well. In that, basically the next year, fast forward now to August of 2022, AMC issues APE, and 3 months later, FTX is going belly up, and there's a lot going on with the banks that I think have to do with that. I'm going to attempt to explain that again someday. I'm still continuing to digest what I believe happened and why APE is related to that. It's a complicated story. I've got the notes on it, but I need to do some work to be able to explain that a little more simply at some point. So we'll work on that. You can't see me, I'm not on camera, but my beagle just walked in the room if you heard some noise. She likes to push the door open. She's figured out this door doesn't stay closed. All right, so January 2023, then, after FTX goes bankrupt and all the issues with the banks, AMC cost to borrow, I'm saying January here, I really just mean early 2023. Cost to borrow spikes to 1,000% plus. That happened twice, as you recall, along the process. In August of this year, APE finally converts. You've seen in another video that I talk about BlackRock and Grayscale start really ramping up their timeline on crypto ETFs. They fast forward the approval process to attempt to get crypto ETFs going. We saw, I highlighted that in the other video, APE created, and 3 months later, FTX starts having real problems. In this case, APE converted, and at the exact same time, BlackRock and Grayscale ramping up crypto ETFs. And then here in November, 3 months again, so August to November, I was kind of drawing that connection in another video, and I said we would see a lot more this month, and sure enough, boy, we have. So we've had Sam convicted through an actual jury trial. Now we have the Binance. I'm calling it conviction, but that is a guilty plea. So I guess I should have specifically called that a guilty plea. We had the crypto spike recently, and we have a famous short seller who just announced he's leaving. All of that on the heels, a couple months after APE is converted. So there's just going to be a lot of story to tell around APE and why I do believe Adam was correct that was the checkmate, and why I believe a lot of these seismic events are related. So Chanos leaves. That's a famous short seller. You can kind of look that up. He's shuttering his hedge fund. That's not just about AMC. That's about a bad position on Tesla and I'm sure some other areas of the market. And he is sort of shuttering as a hedge fund. He'll still run a family office. That's something we should keep our eyes on. Family offices are a bit problematic. There's not a lot of transparency there. But if you look at the sort of the math on how much he was managing versus what he'll be managing now, he's returning a lot of cash to his investors. Well, the only way you return cash is you've got to get that either through financing or you better sell some positions to get it. So let's talk about that in a minute too. And then you've had FTX liquidations. I just mentioned Chanos returning cash. And I'm going to pause here because the beagle won't leave me alone. Just give me a second. Chances are I'll cut that out of the video, but if I leave it in, well, you know what happened. Okay, so lots going on. I'm suggesting, throughout the rest of the end of the year, and if you didn't catch, Chanos said he was going to be returning 90% of his cash to his investors by the end of the year, and then the rest will roll into the next tax year, a little bit in early next year. So kind of here through, January, February, you're going to be seeing the impacts of that. So a few things I want to highlight. Some of these are just kind of Investopedia shots here before I go further about the action with Binance today. And continuing to just help us just gain knowledge one nugget at a time. So if you go look at like liquidity on digital assets and crypto trades, actually I don't think this one was Investopedia. This was another site I was looking at. But just I want to highlight this piece down here at the bottom. So effectively you can pair different assets. And you can see here, pricing determined by an algorithm. It calculates the ratio changes between the tokens in the liquidity pool after a trade and rebalances to maintain equal value. So that's been something we've discussed a lot around AMC and GameStop, is this idea that cross-asset trading, linking assets, pairing assets, in particular in the digital space, and that's where stokens kind of come in. You get wrapping with Bitcoin, Ethereum, other things like that. So this idea that you've got to keep multiple assets balanced, and they've started to trade off of each other. I just want to kind of plant that in your head for future discussions. We're going to continue to look at that and talk about that. And then this idea of synthetics and derivatives. So synthetic assets are becoming popularized for platforms focused on derivatives. And also remember that ape itself was a derivative. So that's part of some of the issues that got caused. Just look what I've underlined here. So the underlying asset itself does not have to be present. Interesting that you can basically create a synthetic position without ever buying the actual asset we're talking about. So, we talk about FTDs, we talk about naked shorting, we talk about tokens not being backed one-to-one. It's effectively both the last slide where I'm talking about pairing different assets, and then this slide where I'm talking about effectively owning assets without owning them. And I had said that in other videos too. If you wanted to take a sizable position without running an asset up, there might be other ways. Look at this other line I'm highlighting, gain tangible exposure, and then the bottom, without having to hold them. So I just want you to understand why this whole digital world is kind of rife with corruption and how it relates to us. Now, what you saw today, which I will highlight a little further in the press conference, was really more about international crime, terrorism, money laundering, drug crime, probably even human trafficking. I don't recall if I heard human trafficking specifically today, but I'm sure that that's involved as well. But I'm going to tie it in because there were some things specifically said in the press conference. So let's do that. Let's highlight a few things. So the first thing was, and this is from a document the government, the CFTC published. You can go find this. Just look for their sort of statement out there on this Binance action. But the key things you can see, so regulatory avoidance and arbitrage. Remember that word arbitrage, right? We heard that a lot around APE. And so this was effectively the government was saying, hey, this has been a way of avoiding our rules. You're going to hear a lot of crypto bros, as I like to call them, kind of whining that, oh, this is just the government overreach, doesn't like DeFi, doesn't like anonymity. I think if you really open your eyes and see what's been going on with crypto and how it's been used for all kinds of crime, then it's important to recognize that, hey, there are real issues here, and this is the government saying you don't get to operate outside the bounds of the law. And I support that because, honestly, operating outside the bounds of the law is how I believe they have operated against AMC. I've talked about that as a kind of a conspiracy in other videos as well. So what else? So they're highlighting criminal activity. Binance recognized that its platform is used to facilitate criminal activity. Now remember, that's them pleading guilty. And I listened to the press conference live today so that I could have a perspective on what they were saying. And they did list a few examples of chats that they had found. So remember, too, a while back we started to see the SEC and the DOJ talking about banking groups and, in this case, crypto groups using sort of non-standard ways of chatting. So Signal, I think, was one. WhatsApp was another. These guys thought they were kind of, finding ways to chat without the government listening in. Well, the government has ways of finding out when you're operating outside of bounds. There were some chats where it was like, I think one executive was talking about basically we might as well just advertise to drug dealers and kind of just tell them, hey, this is where you can come to launder your money. Some stuff. It's pretty wild stuff, to be honest. Kind of crazy. A lot of stuff with Hamas and some other things too were mentioned today. So you saw... and I'm just showing you because what I want you to see is you don't have to take my word for this. You can go actually watch the video. This is on C-SPAN. You can find it elsewhere. It's all over. So you can go back and rewatch the press conference and hear the things that I heard. And look, I get it. Some of us have a lot of skepticism, myself included, on certain elements of the government and whether they are, protecting large powers or whether they're actually working for us. But in either case, in this case, I guess I should say, they are stopping the people who were cheating us, in my opinion. And so I'm going to see that as a good thing. And hopefully we start to see some change going forward with regards to the stock market in particular. Okay, I want to tie this now to a few things that I mentioned the Reddit 2 years ago. I've got plenty of videos on this, lots of tweets about it. And just highlight a few things that I've been calling out. So one is the use of derivatives and swaps. A lot of apes have talked about that. In no way, by the way, am I saying that I'm the guy who's been calling all this out. But I am saying I have been calling these things out. So use of derivatives and swaps, use of digital assets as a way to create synthetic positions, hide FTDs, potentially naked short, all kinds of issues there. And then just tokens as a very specific issue, or tokens if you want to call them that. Well, guess what I heard today? There were four phrases or four words in particular that came up pretty regularly in particular from the head of the CFTC, but from several of these guys today. And you can see that was no less than Merrick Garland and Janet Yellen. This is the top level of some of these regulatory agencies and criminal agencies. Um, I heard derivatives, I heard swaps, I heard tokens, and I heard commodities. Those four words, if you go back and watch that video, you're going to hear them multiple times. Tokens, derivatives, swaps, commodities. Well, what have we been talking about for 2 years? Tokens, derivatives, swaps, and commodities. So I just am very pleased to hear between the lines. These guys see what we've been saying. And keep in mind, actually, I'm not going to jump ahead. I'm going to tell you something in a minute. But they're seeing what we've been saying. And, I tweeted today that we weren't wrong. We just weren't wrong. Like, these guys are now going to jail for the stuff that we called out 2 years ago. All right, so the summary. In the past couple of weeks, right, we've seen both Sam and now CZ either convicted or plead guilty to fraud. We've had a major outspoken short shutter his fund and plans to return cash by the end of the year. So, okay, what does that mean of what's next? I'm going to assume there's some kind of impact of positions being closed. So I mentioned FTX has some liquidations going on. Binance is having to come up with $4 billion, 4.3. I saw several updates today throughout the day of them kind of moving and shifting some money around. And so just think about what backs up these synthetic positions. If they've been wrapped with Bitcoin or if they've been wrapped with Ethereum and some things like that, I think there's starting to be some real problems. And I mean, we've already seen it, right? Like everything that happened with the banks, everything that happened with FTX. And then now, with a major short closing their fund, what is that going to look like as they return that cash? They got to get that cash from somewhere. People often ask me like, well, why haven't, it's sort of a troll position to say. It's like, why aren't the shorts, just profiting off of, they're way green on paper on their position, right? But remember, the only way to move from paper to actually have money in your account is to close your position. You've got to buy to close. And as they start closing their position, that's the entire thesis. You have a short squeeze. It's a tight door to get out of because retail owns the float. And if you want real shares, you got to come to us. Well, so I'm just curious to see what starts to happen as Chanos returns those funds. Either he's got to go finance it and go get funds, but if you look at the difference of what he used to manage to what he's going to be managing now, we're talking an awful lot of money. I don't know that a bank's just going to hand that to him. So if you're not financing that, then the only other way to get that cash is to close positions, right? So I do not want to spread hopium here. I'm not making any predictions, but I'm saying that I'm watching what is next. What is this going to do? Both from Chanos and then from FTX and from Binance and whoever else is in trouble right now. All right, so the other thing, don't sleep on this. This is the second bullet towards the bottom here. The DOJ, the SEC, the CFTC, these guys have a hold of the books now. Binance is going to be, I forgot the official term, but they're basically going to be babysat now. There's going to be an eye over their shoulders and a review of the books. Well, what happens if those books start showing some stories on our stocks? That could get pretty interesting in my opinion. And then again, as a result of all that's gone on with Ape, all that's gone on with the tokens, all that's now going on in criminal proceedings, right? We're not just talking about slaps on the wrist. We're talking about criminal proceedings. I believe the clock is ticking ever closer to midnight for Shorty. That's just my personal belief. Okay, so I said coming soon. I will do the Q4 forecast and the 2024 forecast as a whole. I've already taken time to just sort of do that, let's say in the Excel type of version, my own numbers kind of view. What I just haven't done is to kind of pull that as a story thread together for you and put that in slides, that kind of stuff. But I want to tell you, as I went through that, and I did tweet this, I don't know, maybe last Thursday-ish or something, sometime last week. As I went through the numbers, it became clear to me that call it my opinion, that it's clear what management's decisions have been lately, and that's why I have not complained. I don't love dilution. I am with many of you that I kind of wish we could have kept running on some green days and all of that. But I'm going to tell you a story and show you in the financials what I think the next 5 quarters-ish look like. It's still very bullish. I'm very excited. And I'm going to show you why I still trust this management team and why I'm behind the decisions they've made. And then just show you where I think the business goes. So I think there's a lot of good things coming. Just like I said, in summary, The people who have created all kinds of cheat codes against us have been getting in a lot of trouble, telling me the things that we have believed for a couple of years are not wrong. So I would just say to you, Shorty, what else am I right about? Good luck, and let's go.